All right. Hello, everyone. Super excited to have y'all all here today. Um, Today, I am excited to talk to you about the role of lab work. I'm super passionate about lab work and everything that it can tell us about what's going on in your body. So, I am glad that you are here and we will jump in just a second. We're trying to make sure that we can record this so that you can catch it later. So we're going to see what we can do about that. But um, Jamie, I'll go ahead and get started and we'll just assume that you can hit that record button um, as we go. Does that work? All right. Fantastic. Hello, Kimberly. Hey, Jody. Hope you guys are doing great today. I'm super excited to be here with you. And I can watch the chat, so feel free to pop in the chat with any questions that you have as we go. I love to do an interactive workshop. It's one of the joys of being live. And so let me go ahead and share my screen and we will jump in and get started. So today I really want to talk about the role of lab work in your health. So many times we go to the doctor, we get lab work done, and then we don't actually know what it means. Or we're just told things are normal and they don't actually explain what is going on. And so today I want to talk about that and help you understand what is going on with your labs. My name is Judy Lynham, and as you may know from Testimony Hour a couple of months ago, my life was changed when I was 40 years old and I was hit head on by a drunk driver in a high speed collision. I became a power wheelchair user. I suffered a traumatic brain injury. I lost the use of the right side of my body, and doctors told me that I would never recover, that what I was left with at the 1 year mark would be what I would left with for life. And I want to encourage you today that that does not have to be true for you, no matter what your diagnosis is, because clearly I'm here today, not in a power wheelchair, able to use my body and able to use my brain to help you. Not only was in a power wheelchair, but I was also taking 70 something pills a day. That's a lot. And along with all of those came their own side effects, came complications, and some of those side effects were actually life threatening. I wound up in the hospital on a couple of occasions because of side effects of medications, and each one required more and more and more. And I knew there had to be a different way. And so my path to recovery actually started when I was looking for a solution for pain, not for brain healing, because we had just been told the brain healing wasn't possible. And so I asked, hey, is there anything else that we can do? And the answer was no, you just need to take another medication. And so it's like, therapy. And they said, nope, you're already in therapy 3 to 5 days a week. That's good enough. I said, well, what about my environment? And they said, no, you've got a fantastic husband, which is absolutely true. And he's got you set up for success. And then I said, well, what about my food? And they said, nope, there's nothing that you can take by mouth that goes through your digestive system that will have this level of an effect on your global pain. So you just need to take the prescription pain medication. We know you're not drug seeking, just take the pills. I remember leaving that appointment and telling my husband via a text to talk app because I couldn't talk, so I'd have to text it in and have my phone speak it out loud and said, might have a brain injury, but I'm not stupid. I know that pill has to go through my mouth and my digestive system, and they're expecting it to have an effect on that pain. So surely there's something else that can work. Will you help me? And being the fabulous husband that he is, he said, of course I will. So we changed what I was eating and Literally within weeks, my pain went from excruciating, where my husband was afraid to go over bumps in the road, to almost non-existent pain. And my brain recovery started speeding up. And then I learned even more about the role of toxins in our environment. And after 6 years and 8 months in that power wheelchair, I took my first steps. And so I am super excited as someone who has been there, who has struggled with my health tremendously and has been told that there's no hope. I want to come here and encourage you and say there is hope. And one of the first things that we need to do is we need to understand what is going on in our body. So I went back to school. I became certified as an integrative nutrition health coach and then as a brain health trainer. And then a while back now, I went back to school, got my postgraduate certification as a functional blood chemistry analyst. And with that, I am excited to be able to help people do a deep dive into their labs, figure out what they mean, what's going on, and by doing that, let's create a strategy to health and healing. But it's all going to start when you understand what's actually going on with your health and what those labs mean. So, I want you to know there's two different ways of reading those labs: conventional, which is what you've probably experienced with your doctor, and then functional. And I want to share a little bit with you about those two perspectives because they're very, very different. When we look at conventional labs, we are comparing our results to an average of the population who has taken that test. And I don't know about you, but the average population around me, if I go to the grocery store in the parking lot, if I go to the super center parking lot and I look around, I'm not excited about my health goals being the average of theirs because when I look around, our population is very unhealthy as a whole. And so I want a different standard. Also, when we're looking at conventional labs, imagine that bell curve that we all studied in school, right? Um, we've got the average in this bell, and then we've got the extremes on either end. Well, when you're looking at conventional lab readings, only the top 2.5 and the bottom 2.5% are considered abnormal. We really don't want that because that's going to be extreme, right? So we're in that 95% of that average population when your doctor tells you that your results are normal. And that can be really frustrating because, like, what does that even mean? Tell me, have you ever had lab results come back normal and you were like, nope, I know there's something going on? There has to be. When we wind up in this 95% and we're not in that 2.5% on either end that are extremes, this often results in a wait and see approach. Your doctor's like, well, you're getting close. It looks like you're close to this, but you're not there yet. We'll just wait and see. You don't need medication yet. We'll just wait and see. We'll just monitor you. So come back in 3 months, 6 months, a year, and then we'll look at it again. And so we're basically waiting for disease to progress before we do anything about it, which doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. And then when those results come back as normal, often we're dismissed. And that's frustrating. It kind of belittles us and diminishes our experience and our struggles. And that's not what we need when we're trying to be healthy. And so I'm super excited to present to you the functional approach of looking at labs because we want to compare the results to people who are in peak health. What do I mean by that? They're in their prime of life. They are experiencing no symptoms, they're on no medications. They basically have no issues whatsoever with their health, and they are full of vitality. That's what we want, right? I want that to be my health goal. And yes, I might not be there at the moment, but in comparison, I want to see where am I compared to that peak of health. And when I look at that, where I am on that continuum matters. It doesn't matter if I'm just like in that 95% of people, where I am. Am I close to optimal? Am I heading towards optimal? Or if I look at my lab trends, are they kind of starting to head away from optimal? And so then once I have that information, I can be proactive. I can take corrective action now. And oftentimes, symptoms line up with what I'm feeling and what's showing on these labs because let's face it, if the average range of, say, your sodium should be between 138 and 143, and you're at a 138, are you necessarily going to feel that much different than you would if you were at a 137? I don't think so. So when we start seeing that you're trending away from optimal, we can start taking corrective action then because we know symptoms don't just show up when you hit some magic number, right? So we want to look at it from that perspective. Does this make sense? Are you excited about learning about your labs from a functional perspective and getting those answers? Because I am super excited to share them with you. Yes, yes, yes. All right, let me give you an example. So, one of the things that oftentimes we think about and is a huge, huge health crisis in our country is the path to blood sugar dysregulation, right? We have so many people in our society who tend to be having issues regulating their blood sugar. Maybe it's too low, maybe it's too high. So, where are you? Most of us are somewhere on this path. And so, finding out where we are is helpful. Um, so, if we are over here on the left, then, what's starting this? What's starting to make it a little bit shaky? Irregular sleep, being on the go constantly. Go, 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 push, 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 harder, 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 faster, faster, faster. Oh, exhausting, right? Stress, poor nutrition, a lack of movement, and even medications can cause some blood sugar dysregulation. And so, if we don't address it over on that side, then oftentimes we fall into this little slump here where we're starting to get hangry, or if you're like me, panicky. That's what my daughters call it. I get panicky. If I've gone too long without food, then I start getting kind of frantic, right? Like we've got to do all this now. Where is this? Where is that? Like it just builds, and I start getting very panicky. A lot of people get hangry. Tell me, are you on one of those? Do you get hangry or panicky? Tell me I'm not alone. Um, Maybe you get really shaky before you eat meals if it's been too long. Um, Maybe you're tired. You get really tired in the afternoon and you're like, oh, I know if I just have something to eat, it'll perk me back up and I'll have energy. Hmm. Headaches. Yes, headaches can be a very big sign that you're not getting what you need. And the reason why, and we'll get into this in a little bit too, the reason why is because your brain operates based on glucose and sugar regulation. And so oftentimes we will see as we keep going that we're going to start having things like fatigue after meals. Maybe we have irregular mood swings. Maybe we're gaining weight in the abdomen area, frequent urination, cravings. The more cravings we have, the more that's a sign that things are dysregulated. And it doesn't necessarily mean blood sugar. Oftentimes, cravings can be a sign of other things that are off in the body and can be confirmed with other labs. Irregular menstrual cycles, acne. Acne's been referred to as diabetes of the skin because it has to do with how your body is regulating blood sugar. And even things like PCOS can be rooted back to how is your body processing insulin? How is your body processing glucose. How is your pancreas working? That's what we really want to know. And if we keep going, we head towards type 2 diabetes or type 1 diabetes if there's an autoimmune issue in play. Sometimes it can be type 1 diabetes. But we continue to have a difficult time losing weight, memory issues, blurred vision, again, that cognitive type functioning as a result of the glucose dysregulation. Um, Cuts are slower to heal, sores are slower to heal. Maybe you have numbness or tingling in your extremities. Those are all signs of blood sugar dysregulation. And here's the great thing, we can actually reverse all those things. You don't have to keep going in that direction. We can reverse it. What labs might we want to see in order to see where we are? Of course, you're probably automatically thinking of your fasting blood sugar that they test, maybe your fasting insulin, your HbA1c, which is fantastic for seeing where you've been for the last 2 or 3 months. But did you know that your cholesterol can give you a good indication of your blood sugar regulation? Most people are very fascinated to find out that cholesterol is not an issue in and of itself. Cholesterol is actually a symptom of other things going on in your body. Did you know that? Have you heard that before? I'd love to know if you have. Um, Cholesterol is often a sign of blood sugar dysregulation. It can be an autoimmune issue, inflammation, infection, thyroid issues, hormone dysregulation, all sorts of things can affect our cholesterol. Even vitamin deficiencies can affect our cholesterol. And this is one reason why simply trying to suppress it with a medication doesn't really work because your body's trying to send you a message. It's saying, hey, something's going on. Your body's trying to counteract that by how it's reacting. And so if we just squash that reaction, it doesn't solve the root problem, which is what we're actually after when we are looking at functional labs. One other thing that you can look at to get some clues about your blood sugar is your DHEA level. And this is actually a hormone precursor that's put out by your adrenals. Most of the time, when we think about adrenals, we think about cortisol, adrenaline, all those types of things. And yes, that very much comes into play because your adrenals are important in working with your nervous system regulation. And we'll get into this in just a second, too. But just know that if your hormones are off, if your stress levels are off, if your sleep is off, it's going to start affecting your blood sugar regulation. And it's definitely one of those things that we can address. We can see it in our labs. When we start seeing that heading in the wrong direction, we can address that with our lifestyle and we can get it going back in the right direction. So I mentioned DHEA, and I really want to talk about your adrenals as a rule because most people don't think about this. In fact, if you look at older medical textbooks, they actually don't even include the adrenals as a part of your anatomy. How crazy is that? Mind blowing. They're so important. We have two nervous systems. We have our sympathetic nervous system and our parasympathetic nervous system. And maybe you've heard about this. Your sympathetic nervous system, we often think about as your fight or flight or freeze or fawn, depending on your reaction there. Um, but that's where your cortisol is in play. You're under a lot of stress. Your body's fighting for its life. And so, what is it going to do when it's fighting for its life? It's going to put out cortisol. When it pumps out cortisol, that's going to elevate your blood pressure. It's going to quicken your pulse. It's going to shut down some of your bodily functions. So it's going to stop digestion, for example. If you're fleeing a burning building, it's like, oh, this food can wait. I'll digest it later. I just need to get out of here. The same thing with hormones. It's like, not worried about reproduction. I just need to get out of here. And so it definitely has an effect on our hormone levels. It also increases our glucose, our blood sugar. It rushes the blood flow out to our extremities, our arms and our legs, such that we can flee. So if you think about all of your internal organs in your abdomen, they're not getting as much blood flow. And it changes your ability to focus. So, for example, if you've ever been in a high stress situation, maybe it looked like you were going to be in a car accident, and all of a sudden things start going in slow motion. It feels like it's going in slow motion. Have you had that happen? Um, that's because you are getting so much flowing to your brain that your brain's operating more quickly. And so it feels like you're going in slow motion because your brain's operating so much faster, right? Um, Kimberly, I see you can relate to that. I mean, as someone who has had a traumatic past with a vehicle accident, I'll tell you, it happens more often than I would like for it to, for sure. But it really helps us to focus in on one thing. It shuts down everything else so that we can focus in on one thing. Our brain's operating faster. And so then it appears like it's going in slow motion because your brain can actually process it, right? So that's good. It's great if you're fleeing a burning building. It's fantastic if you're trying to avoid a car accident. We need to have this sympathetic nervous system. We don't want to think of it as negative. And we should only be operating out of our sympathetic nervous system typically less than 5% of the time. 95% of the time, we need to be operating in our parasympathetic nervous system, which is our rest, digest, restore, and heal state. Doesn't it just sound better? um, when we are in that state, our body can uh, put out DHEA. Now, keep in mind, our body can't do both at the same time. It says, I'm either fighting for my life or it's okay for me to rest and digest, restore, reproduce, right? Um, and so when we're in this parasympathetic state, we can then produce DHEA, which is the precursor to all of your other sex hormones, to your progesterone, your estrogen, your testosterone. But it also helps to regulate your mood. We all know that, right? Our hormones affect our mood. Just ask us PMS week, right? um, it helps our cognition, know how, yes, there might be that boost when you're fleeing a burning building and things are going in slow motion, but it's not really hard um, to imagine how much more clearly you'll be able to see a big picture and be more creative and do those sorts of things when you are in a rest, digest, restore, and heal state. It also gives your body cellular energy at that root level, such that you're reproducing healthy cells, and the cells that you're having are getting the energy that they need to do the tasks that they have. So, what kind of labs might show us about this? Obviously, we can do some hormone testing and see what's going on. We can do cortisol testing, but also your CMP, your complete metabolic panel, or sometimes it's referred to as a comprehensive metabolic panel. This is the one that has your glucose, your sodium, your potassium, your chloride, your carbon dioxide, all those sorts of things. That can give us a lot of information on how your adrenals are functioning. And this is where I like to say, this is why we look at the relationships and the patterns. Because, yes, your sodium might tell us whether the sodium levels in your blood are high or low, but actually, the relationship of those electrolytes tell us how your adrenals are working. And it tells us how acidic your blood is. And so we don't want to just look at one off numbers. We want to look at them in relationship with one another and the patterns that they can create. Your B vitamin levels can also tell us how your adrenal system is working. And we all know that a lot of times B vitamins are promoted on the bottle as being great for energy, right? Well, it's because it operates here with the cellular energy and with giving your cells the nutrients that they need. So if we are low in our B vitamins, we often have an issue with our adrenal system. And I'm with you, Kimberly. I find it fascinating. I could do a deep dive into our amazing bodies all day long, every day, and just keep learning more and more and more, because it is amazing how we are created with such intricacy, and how we can look at these things in a relationship and see what's going on in our body. Where do we need support? What part of our body is struggling? And so when we look at our labs in this way, we can get answers. And we're not really worried if it's normal or not. We can go from being unhealthy to healthy, or to healthier, just by seeing what needs to be supported. So it's absolutely fascinating. Let's see, let's look at another one. What about brain health? Any of y'all concerned about your brain health? Family members with dementia, Alzheimer's, memory loss, Parkinson's, maybe like me, they've had a history of traumatic brain injuries, concussions, things like that. I know, yes to all of that, right? Um, I was a caregiver. I was the guardian for my grandmother for the last 6 years of her life when she had Alzheimer's. And so I was on the caregiver side of the equation. And then after my TBI, I was on the patient side of the equation. And I'm not sure if it was harder or not, knowing kind of that what was going on, because in some ways I knew what was going on, but I couldn't express it. Not for the first while, then I couldn't figure anything out. But later on, I kind of knew that these were issues because I had been on the caregiver side before. But it's important to know that there are things that we can do. These are the things that are risk factors for dementia, for any kind of neurological issue. These are the risk factors: blood flow, retirement and aging. Are you getting older? Are you using your brain? Are you learning new things? Right? Inflammation, that back injury, that seemed to be the one to picture the inflammation for all of us. Um, Inflammation is hard on your body. Genetics. You may have a genetic factor and a genetic predisposition, but did you know that regardless of your genes, 90+% of your health is actually lifestyle related? And that statistic comes from the CDC. So, if that's coming from the CDC, that is probably actually more than 90 something percent. But even the CDC says that only about 5% of your health is because of your genes. Why? Because our lifestyle can turn on and can turn off that gene expression. So the vast majority of times, even with the genes, we can still turn on and off those gene expressions. Head trauma, like I mentioned, it can start being cumulative. And a lot of times people are like, oh, it's just what it is. But I'm here to tell you, you can heal from head trauma. I'm living, breathing, walking, talking proof of that. So don't lose hope. Toxins. So many times we have toxins in our environment that we don't even know about. One of the significant moments in my healing was actually when I found out that I had neurotoxins in my shampoo. And that didn't make a lot of sense to me. Why would I put neurotoxins on my head when I'm trying to heal a brain injury? And so I changed all that out in March, April of 2019, and July 6th, 2019, that same year, I took my first steps after 6 years and 8 months in a wheelchair. And I know that it wasn't a coincidence that my recovery went in fast forward after taking out those toxins. Everything before that was important too, but it really sped up when I wasn't putting neurotoxins on my head. Mental health. So many times there's a stigma attached to mental health, isn't there? We're kind of ashamed of it, we're hiding it. But mental health is brain health. Brain health, your physical brain functionality is so, so important and controls your mental health. To me, it's a tragedy that psychology is the only field of medicine that doesn't routinely study the organ that it treats. It doesn't examine the organ that it treats. And we can show you scan after scan after scan that shows physical, structural damage, injury, lack of blood flow, all these things have a direct relationship to your mental health. And if we were to treat mental health as brain health, we wouldn't have the same stigma about it. And we would be much more likely to take action and to help reverse those things instead of to just prescribe medications. Immunity and infection is another one. If you've ever had an elderly relative who has a UTI, you will see very quickly how much infection can affect your brain. It is the number one thing they look for in nursing homes when patients start acting dramatically different or spiraling downward. We start looking for a UTI. It's the most common infection, and it has a tremendous role. Immunity, your immune system, your levels of infection, how well you can fight those off are super powerful when it comes to your brain health. Neurohormone deficiencies. What do you think of when you think of neurohormones? Can you think of one off the top of your head? Most of the time we're like, what? I mean, sure, we might have a neurohormone, but I don't know what it is. Vitamin D is actually not a vitamin. Vitamin D is a neurohormone. Did I just blow your mind? We're Americans. We call things names that they are not, right? Um, and so we call it vitamin D, but it's actually a neurohormone and it's a master neurohormone. It helps to control how all the other hormones in your body act. And so, yes, that is exactly why vitamin D is important. And that's why it's so important to be out in the sun. That's why, you know, your normal levels of vitamin D that they tell you, here's a freebie for you. It wasn't in my plan, but they'll tell you that your vitamin D levels are normal, anywhere from 30 to 100. I will tell you right here, right now, you can quote me on it. It needs to be above 50 for your immune system to work, above 50 for your thyroid to work properly, above 60 for protection from hormonal cancers, and it needs to be above 80 for cognitive and neurological benefits. So when we see that the vast majority of our population is deficient by normal standards, that means they're under that 30. We actually need it to be above 80 for optimal cognitive and neurological health. Super, super important. Diabetes. This is Dr. Daniel Amen's terminology of diabetes and obesity that go together so often because of the issues with insulin regulation, because of the issues with glucose use in your brain. And many times they've actually started referring to dementia as type 3 diabetes because of that. So it's super important. Sleep issues. Have you ever wondered why you can't focus after a terrible night of sleep? I know Jamie has a newborn. I'm sure you can relate to this. Um, when we're not sleeping well, it's a lot harder to figure out what's going on in the day, making sure we've got all of our ducks in a row and all those sorts of things. Um, Studies show that if you're even 2% dehydrated, that's not much. You make more mistakes. Studies also show that when you are dehydrated, you make just as many mistakes while driving as a drunk driver, someone driving under the influence. That's horrifying. To me, as someone whose life has been literally turned upside down by a drunk driver, and to know that it's like 85% of all Americans are chronically dehydrated, um, it is super, super important. Your body overall is 70% water, your brain is 80% water. And so you can just think about that of, if it's 80%, we're starting to lose it, then we're also losing cognitive functioning. And so it's really important to say, hey, these are our risks. Well, if you know the risks, can you do about it? Well, we have labs that can give information on these things, on our blood flow, inflammation, toxins, immunity, infection, neurohormones, diabetes, and even better, we have other labs that can give us direction for a healing with your mental health, your sleep issues, your head trauma, and your genetics that give us a path to go such that if you do have a head trauma, we can help you heal and we can take care of all of these other issues such that that is an outlier, right? Sleep apnea is super important to have taken care of because it cuts off the oxygen supply. And then we're going up to the blood flow issue. So, absolutely, we can say, hey, what's going on here? Why are we having these issues? How can we get to a path of healing? Because typically, if we have a symptom, it doesn't come by itself. Have you ever had an illness with only one symptom? I know I haven't, right? Even if we think about the common cold, right? You got the congestion, you got the cough, you got the headache, you got the blah feeling. Maybe you don't feel like eating, right? All of these symptoms go together and they're rooted in certain things. And so when we look at our labs, we can start getting information not only on what's going on, but what direction we need to go for healing in all of these things. So the only thing we actually can't control is your aging, which, God gives you every single day. So take advantage of that. Getting older is not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. Have you looked online? Right? You see all these 90-year-olds, like a 92-year-old doing gymnastics, and these 95 and 96-year-old husband and wife doing competitive dancing and all sorts of things. I'm like, wow, mind blown, right? But we can absolutely take care of these other things because if we could take care of our inflammation, if we could take care of our infections, if we could take care of our circulation and our blood flow, if we could take care of all of our deficiencies, our hormones, our genetic, we could remove all the toxins, we could get good sleep. I mean, why wouldn't you want to get older? You have all the great wisdom that comes with age and a tremendously healthy body to go with that. Of course, that's what we want, right? And we can say, we might be retired, but we can keep learning. We can stay active. We can keep those new neuron connections happening. And in that way, we aren't going to start losing our brain health. We're going to keep it going. So, what do you want to do about it? We can turn your normal labs into information that you can actually use. I do this all the time for clients. I say, like, hey, give me your labs. We can put it into a report. I'm telling you, I had a professor in college who wrote verbose at the top of every single one of my papers. Don't know if any of y'all can relate, but yes, verbose. That describes me. When I do a report for clients, I like to do a deep, deep dive. And so the average length of my reports is 40 to 60 pages long when I go in depth with this. I will tell you, I had a client who had been told for years that she was a hypochondriac. She had been turned away by doctor after doctor after doctor. And they were like, you just need to quit coming in. You are a hypochondriac. You're giving yourself these issues. She had boils on her skin. She's not a hypochondriac. They were like, oh, it's just from stress. It's just eczema. She's like, this is not eczema. And so I was like, you know what? Let's look at your labs. And she's like, they're not going to show anything. They said they were normal. I said, let's look at your labs. And so I sent her a report. Hers was actually about 80 pages. And she told me that she read it cover to cover 4 or 5 times that first day. And she said every time she read it, she just wept. She said it was finally proof that it wasn't all in her head. It wasn't ever all in her head. The only people that were having issues in their head were the people who were saying there wasn't an issue, right? You are the expert on your body. You've lived there your entire life. You know when something isn't right. You know when you'd like to improve something. You know. Don't give up. You can find answers. And so I offer functional blood chemistry analysis, doing this deep dive with you. And if that's something that you're interested in, I would be happy to talk to you about that. Now, there's something else. I have a bonus for you guys today. You can take a picture of the QR code, or we'll also drop a link in the chat. Um, but we can go here and we can, let me see if I can grab this link real quick. We can, here you go. Go here and I have a PDF for you that explains what labs might you want to look at. What labs would I recommend? Now, if you have certain issues, that's my general panel that I recommend for almost everyone. Sometimes, depending on what your symptoms are, I'll customize that, and you can use labs that you already have. If they are recent enough, then we can use labs that you already have. You don't have to go out and get new ones. If you want to have new ones, that time of year where everyone's using up their benefits, if you want to go in and have your doctor run labs, that's awesome. And I have a list in here of suggested labs for you to ask for them to run. Please know you are in charge and responsible for your health. They work for you. You can ask them for labs and they can say, like, hey, we can do this or we can't do this. And you can say, order them anyway, please. Right? If you need labs, you don't have a doctor that is willing to work with you, or perhaps you're paying out of pocket anyway, I can order those labs for you at a significant discount, typically about the same price as your copay is. And so if that's something that you're interested in and you want to have labs run, you know, set up an appointment with me. We can talk, send me a message and we can talk. You'll be able to have all my contact information if you go through this QR code, and you'll be able to get that PDF that I put together for you to explain this process of what labs you want to look at. Why is it important? What if your labs are high? What if they're low? I've got all that in there. So look at that. And if you have any questions, you know how to find me. I am active at AHS on their platform. You can reach out and message me there. Fantastic, Kimberly. I love that. I will look forward to talking to you. And, ask me on the AHS platform. Come and visit me over on Facebook. Come check out my website. Send me a message. I love helping people. I'm super passionate about helping people find hope with when it comes to their health, because that was the one thing that I needed the most was hope. And it was the one thing they wouldn't give me. They couldn't give me because they didn't understand. And so that's why I am super passionate about saying, you know what? There's always hope. There's always things that we can do. And when we do a deep dive into your labs, we can see what's going on, and it gives us a really great path, a strategy of how to get you from unhealthy to healthy, or from healthy to thriving and just full of vitality, so that you can leave that legacy of health for your kids, for your grandkids, and for the people that you love. So I'm going to stop sharing right now, but I've got a little bit more time here. If you guys want to ask any questions, I am happy to answer questions for you.
Great workshop, Judy. I had a question. I can't remember what it was. I meant to screenshot it. Kimberly said she's really interested in sodium and inflammation.
Yeah, your body is great about regulating itself. And so sodium can play a role, but your body seeks homeostasis, right? You're intricately designed that way, such that if you have too much, your body's going to hold on to that water to dilute it. If you have too little, your body's going to let go of that water so that it's um, not too low. And then we can also look at, how does that inflammation relate to all of your electrolytes as a whole? Because if they're out of balance, it can actually change the acidity of your blood. And often that's causing even more inflammation. It becomes this vicious cycle. So we can definitely look at some of these very normal labs. They're not weird labs. If you get that PDF and you look at the list of labs that I recommend, none of them are weird specialty labs. Maybe the weirdest one is zinc because doctors really should be testing for zinc and they just don't. But um, it's there's nothing weird in there. And if you look back at your history, if you look back at your my chart at your labs, you probably have quite a few of them in your history. That's another thing I like to do is look at your history. Where are you trending over time? Can we go back and pinpoint when issues started and what's going on? It can be really, really eye-opening and make a lot of sense.
I remember my question. Do you see a lot of copper deficiencies, or do you usually test for those?
Copper deficiencies and excess zinc go hand in hand because they keep each other in check.
That's what
And
remembering.
zinc zinc, most people, oh, you're quite welcome. Zinc is actually one thing that most people are low in. And so when they're low in that, we can start looking like, hey, is the copper too high? If their zinc is too high, is their copper too low? Zinc is a really good kind of barometer for me because zinc has so many effects.
Mhm.
For those of you who have husbands, zinc is super important for prostate health, right? It's actually the number one deficiency associated with BPH, benign prostate hypertrophy. And so, if we can regulate those zinc levels, it gives your prostate that level of support that you need. And yes, we need to say like, hey, if your zinc levels are off, where are your copper levels? Um, Copper tends to take lab a little bit longer to get back for me. So I usually start with the zinc and then go from there. Interestingly, I had a client the other week who their zinc levels were really high. Well, turns out I was like, we need to get a copper test on you, my friend, because I need to figure out what's going on here. And I was like, I'm not sure why this is so high, and thought about it for a while, and his wife messaged me and said, we think we just figured it out. He's in construction and he's constantly holding zinc plated screws in his mouth during the day before he uses them. And so he's absorbing the zinc from these zinc plated screws that he's holding in his mouth day after day after day after day. So definitely your environment can play a role in what you do, and in your habits play a role because it seems like it's something super simple, but if you're doing that day after day after day, it's like holding a zinc lozenge in your mouth, 8 hours a day every day. So yeah. Michael says, what if you don't have much of blood work history? You just had labs run, but that's like the first time in years. That's okay. We can say, hey, where are you now? And we can look at it and we can compare it to your symptoms. I always have my clients do a symptom assessment so that I can try to match that up and say, hey, it also gives a priority level to say which one of these things is affecting you the most right now. And often that helps us find that root cause that we're looking for. So if you have labs that are current, then that's great. It's a great starting point.
Awesome. Any other questions? We got about 9 minutes left. Okay, awesome. Well, Thank you so much for your workshop today, Judy. I'm so glad
You're
you're here on our wonderful birthday.
Yes,
So
happy birthday. What a great celebration.
I know, right? Yeah, I'm super excited. I love being able to help people, and just a year of helping people is a fantastic mile marker. So
Yeah.
that's great. So awesome. Thank you for being a part of this. And we will put up the replay so everybody can catch it who missed it earlier.
Well, perfect. And now everybody can quick take a break, maybe check in at work if that's where you're supposed to
I
be
think
right now.
we got like an hour before the next one pops up. I think 2
Check
o'clock.
in at work and, before your next, call, your next conference call that you have to get on.
Yeah.
So yeah, and if you guys have more questions that you think of later, feel free, download the PDF. There's a way to contact me there, and I am very open to answering questions, seeing, maybe what would be the right next step for you, looking at the labs that you have, seeing if you need perhaps more. So feel free to message me. I love to offer hope. I love to help you out.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. Thanks, everyone.
All right. Thanks.